I tell her I'm a salesman.
Recognize the MO?
MO is that they're good.
Michael Mann's Heat is considered one of the greatest crime films ever made. When it was released in December 1995, critics called it a masterpiece. The downtown Los Angeles shootout scene, with its thunderous rifle fire echoing between skyscrapers, changed action cinema forever. Every gunfight that came after had to be measured against those 11 minutes of brutal tactical precision. Al Pacino and Robert De Niro sharing the screen for the first time in that iconic coffee shop scene became instant film history. Two legends, sitting across from each other in a downtown diner, talking about loneliness and obsession. The scene became required viewing for film students. But what you see on screen is only half the story. Behind every frame of Heat lies a world of obsessive detail, bizarre coincidences, method acting taken to dangerous extremes, and creative decisions that almost destroyed the entire production. Some of these facts are so strange they sound made up, but these are all documented. These are all real. Michael Mann spent over a decade developing Heat before cameras ever rolled. The film started as a made-for-television movie called L.A. Takedown that aired on NBC in August 1989. Mann wrote and directed it, hoping to prove the concept. He hated how it turned out. The budget was too small, barely $3 million. The casting was wrong, unknown actors trying to carry material that demanded major stars. And the story he wanted to tell got compressed into 90 minutes with commercial breaks. Mann watched it air and knew he'd failed, but he didn't give up. He spent the next 6 years rewriting the script, expanding every character, deepening every relationship, and obsessing over every detail until he had something worthy of a theatrical release. The television version still exists. If you watch both films side by side, they share almost identical plot structures. But Heat transforms every moment into something richer and more complex. Number 1. Robert De Niro prepared for his role as Neil McCauley by actually spending time with real career criminals. He didn't just interview them in prison visiting rooms, he lived among them. De Niro convinced Chicago detective Chuck Adamson to introduce him to active thieves and bank robbers still operating in the city. For weeks, De Niro shadowed these men, studying how they moved through crowds without drawing attention, how they talked in coded language, and how they thought about their work with the same professionalism as any skilled tradesman. One thief taught him the specific body language of someone who's always looking for exits, the way your eyes scan a room without moving your head. Another showed him how professional criminals case locations for hours, watching security patterns until they can predict exactly what will happen at any moment. De Niro absorbed everything and brought that authenticity to every frame of his performance. Number 2. The famous coffee shop scene between Al Pacino and Robert De Niro almost didn't happen. The two actors had appeared in The Godfather Part 2 together back in 1974, but they never shared a scene. One played the young Vito Corleone in flashbacks, the other played his son Michael in the present-day storyline. Heat was supposed to be their first real on-screen meeting, and Michael Mann knew the weight that scene would carry. He'd written it as the emotional center of the entire film. But during pre-production, about 3 weeks before shooting was scheduled to begin, Pacino started having doubts about the scene. He felt the dialogue was too on the nose, too theatrical, too much like a playwright writing a big dramatic moment instead of two real men talking. He wanted to throw out Mann's script entirely and improvise the entire conversation, treating it like a jazz session where both actors could riff off each other. De Niro refused immediately. He believed Mann's script was perfect as written, every word carefully chosen, every pause precisely placed. For 2 weeks, they argued through their representatives while Mann tried to keep the production on schedule and prevent his centerpiece scene from falling apart completely. The studio started panicking because if Pacino and De Niro couldn't agree on how to play their big scene together, the entire marketing campaign would collapse. Finally, Mann proposed a compromise. They would shoot the scene twice. Once with the scripted dialogue performed exactly as written. Once with complete improvisation, no script, just two actors talking about whatever felt natural. They'd shoot both versions and decide in the editing room which one worked better. When they watched both versions back-to-back, everyone agreed immediately. The scripted version was superior. The improvisation was interesting, two great actors exploring characters, but it lacked the precision and emotional impact of Mann's carefully constructed dialogue. That's what made it into the final film. Every word you hear in that coffee shop is exactly what Michael Mann wrote. Number 3. The downtown Los Angeles bank robbery shootout took 45 days to rehearse before a single frame was filmed. Michael Mann wanted the gunfight to feel real, not like a typical action movie. He hired former British Special Air Service soldiers to train the actors in tactical movement, weapon handling, and room-clearing techniques. Val Kilmer, Tom Sizemore, Robert De Niro, and the rest of the crew spent weeks learning how professional criminals would actually execute an armored car heist. They practiced in full gear, wearing the same heavy masks and body armor their characters would use. They learned to communicate through hand signals, to move as a coordinated unit, to cover each other's blind spots. By the time cameras rolled, the actors moved like an actual tactical unit. You can see it in the scene. There's no wasted movement, no Hollywood heroics, just brutal efficiency. Number 4. Val Kilmer became so proficient with firearms during training that he could perform a tactical reload, changing magazines on his rifle while moving, in under 2 seconds. Navy SEALs who watched the film later contacted the production team, asking who trained the actors because Kilmer's weapon handling in the shootout scene is textbook special operations technique. His reload during the firefight, where he transitions from his rifle to his pistol, is still shown in some tactical training courses as an example of proper form. Kilmer practiced that single movement over 800 times until it became muscle memory. Number 5. The sound of the gunfire in the bank robbery scene is completely real. Most action films use sweetened sound effects recorded in controlled studio environments, then adding bass and reverb in post-production to make guns sound more dramatic and cinematic. Michael Mann refused to do that. He wanted the actual sound of rifles being fired in an urban environment, the way it would really sound if you were standing on a downtown Los Angeles street while a gunfight erupted around you. The sound team spent weeks recording real weapons fire in downtown Los Angeles, setting up microphones at different distances and angles to capture how the sound bounces off glass buildings and echoes through concrete canyons. They recorded the sharp crack of the initial shot, the way it reverberates between skyscrapers, the overlapping chaos when multiple weapons fire simultaneously. Then they layered that authentic audio into the scene during post-production, matching each gunshot on screen with the corresponding real sound recording. The result is visceral and terrifying in a way that sweetened sound effects can never be. When those rifles open up during the armored car robbery, you feel it in your chest. Your body reacts to it the way it would react to real gunfire. Audience members in theaters during the initial release said they instinctively ducked or covered their ears during that sequence. The sound design is that effective, that real, that physically overwhelming. Number 6. Al Pacino's character, Vincent Hanna, was based on a real Chicago detective named Charlie Adamson. Michael Mann met Adamson while researching his 1981 film, Thief, another crime drama set in Chicago's underworld, and they became close friends over years of conversations. Adamson was obsessed with his work to the point where it destroyed his marriage, alienated his children, and left him emotionally isolated despite being surrounded by cops and criminals every day. Mann spent years documenting Adamson's life, recording their conversations in diners and police station break rooms, studying how the job consumed him completely. Adamson would get calls in the middle of the night about a robbery in progress and leave his wife in bed without a word. He'd miss his kids' birthday parties because he was following a lead. He'd sit across from criminals in interrogation rooms for hours, sometimes days, trying to break them down through sheer mental endurance. Many of Hanna's mannerisms, his intensity, his inability to disconnect from work even when he's home with his wife, came directly from Adamson's real life. The scene where Hanna leaves a restaurant in the middle of dinner because he gets a call about a lead came from a real incident Adamson told Mann about. When Adamson finally saw Heat in a theater in Chicago, surrounded by other cops who knew his story, he told Mann it was like watching his life on screen. He wasn't sure how he felt about that. Seeing yourself reduced to a character in a movie, even a great movie, forces you to confront things you'd rather ignore. Number 7. The scene where Neil McCauley abandons Edie at the airport was shot in a real working terminal at Los Angeles International Airport. Michael Mann refused to use a set or a closed terminal. He wanted the chaos and energy of actual travelers moving through the space. The production had to coordinate with airport security, clear specific areas for filming, and work around flight schedules. Amy Brenneman, who plays Edie, said the hardest part was maintaining emotional focus while hundreds of real passengers walked past them wondering what was happening. The overhead announcements you hear in the scene are real airport announcements that happened during filming. Number 8. Tom Sizemore's character, Michael Chirito, was written specifically for him after Michael Mann saw Sizemore in a small supporting role in another film. Mann was impressed by Sizemore's ability to project both intelligence and violence simultaneously. He expanded the character's role in the script, giving Chirito more screen time and a more complex arc. Sizemore prepared for the role by spending time with former bank robbers in Los Angeles. One of them taught him a technique for staying calm during high-stress situations, breathing slowly and deliberately to control adrenaline. You can see Sizemore using that technique during the armored car robbery, staying completely focused while chaos erupts around him. Number 9. The blue-tinted color palette that defines Heat's visual style was created through a custom film processing technique that Michael Mann developed specifically for this production. He worked directly with the film laboratory Technicolor to create a unique bleach bypass process that desaturated colors and enhanced blues and grays while preserving shadow detail. Traditional bleach bypass makes everything look harsh and contrasty, almost like black and white film with a hint of color. Mann wanted something more subtle, more controlled. He wanted the warmth sucked out of the image without losing the richness of the blacks or the detail in the highlights. The lab technician spent months experimenting with different chemical processes, adjusting the timing, the temperature, the concentration of the bleach solution, until they achieved exactly what Mann envisioned. Every single frame of Heat, over 2 hours and 50 minutes of footage, went through this custom process by hand. The film was shot on traditional color-negative stock, then processed through this unique bleach bypass that Mann and Technicolor had developed together. The result is that distinctive, cold, clinical look that makes Heat feel different from every other film released in 1995. Mann believed this visual style reflected the emotional isolation of both Neil McCauley and Vincent Hanna, two men living in the same city, moving through the same streets, but completely alone inside their own heads. The blue-gray color palette became part of the storytelling, a visual representation of their inner lives. Number 10. Robert De Niro's famous line, "Don't let yourself get attached to anything you are not willing to walk out on in 30 seconds flat if you feel the heat around the corner," came from a real criminal Michael Mann interviewed. The thief explained his philosophy about relationships and possessions, how professional criminals can't afford emotional attachments because they need to be able to disappear instantly. Mann wrote the line verbatim into the script, and it became the thematic core of the entire film. De Niro delivers it with such conviction because he understood the psychology behind it after spending time with the same criminals Mann had interviewed. Number 11. The scene where Vincent Hanna confronts his wife Justine, played by Diane Venora, about her affair was completely improvised by Al Pacino and Diane Venora. Michael Mann gave them the setup and told them to play the confrontation however felt natural. What you see in the film is their first take. Pacino's intensity, the way he circles Venora, the raw emotion in both performances, none of it was scripted. Mann loved it so much he used the entire take without any editing. Venora later said it was one of the most intense acting experiences of her career because Pacino's commitment to the moment was so complete, she forgot cameras were rolling. Number 12. The house used for Neil McCauley's ultra-minimalist home in the Hollywood Hills was not a set. It's a real house that Michael Mann found during location scouting in the hills above Los Angeles. The owner, a modernist architect, had designed the house specifically to be empty and cold, with almost no furniture or personal items, clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and an aesthetic that prioritized space and light over comfort or warmth. When Mann saw it, he knew immediately it was perfect for Neil's character. A man so disciplined and detached from normal human connections that his home looks like a museum exhibit or an architecture magazine spread. A place to exist, not to live. The production rented the house for 3 weeks of filming and barely changed anything. The sparse furniture, the empty walls, the sterile kitchen with no food visible, the bedroom that looks more like a hotel room than a place someone actually sleeps. All of it belonged to the actual owner. The only things the production added were a few personal items for Neil, a book on the nightstand, some clothes in the closet, the bare minimum to suggest someone lives there. But even those additions reinforce the character. Everything Neil owns could fit in a single suitcase. He could walk out in 30 seconds flat if he felt the heat around the corner, and nothing in that house would tie him to the location. The architecture itself tells you everything you need to know about who Neil McCauley is. Number 13. Jon Voight's character, Nate, was almost cut from the film entirely. During editing, Michael Mann felt the movie was running too long and considered removing several subplots. Nate's scenes were on the chopping block because they didn't directly advance the main conflict between Neil and Vincent. But when Mann screened a version without Nate, he realized the character provided crucial context for Neil's world. Nate represents the life Neil is trying to leave behind, the old-school criminal who got out while he could. Mann restored every scene and trimmed time elsewhere. Number 14. The coffee shop where Neil and Vincent meet was a real diner in downtown Los Angeles that's no longer in business. Michael Mann chose the location because he wanted the scene to feel grounded in reality, not staged on a set. The other customers you see in the background are real people who happened to be eating there during filming. The production asked them to sign releases and kept them in the shot. Some of them had no idea they were watching Al Pacino and Robert De Niro film one of cinema's most famous scenes. They thought it was just another movie production in Los Angeles. Number 15. Ashley Judd's character, Charlene Shiherlis, was expanded during production because Michael Mann was so impressed with Judd's audition. The original script had Charlene in only 2 scenes, but Judd brought such depth to the character during her audition that Mann rewrote the role, giving her more screen time and a more complex relationship with Chris Shiherlis, played by Val Kilmer. The scene where Charlene confronts Chris about his criminal life, telling him she knows exactly what he does and how dangerous it is, was written specifically after Mann saw Judd's range. Number 16. The armored car robbery sequence was filmed on a real Los Angeles street that the production shut down for 3 days. Local residents complained about the noise from the gunfire even though the production had permits and had notified everyone in the area. On the second day of filming, the noise complaints became so severe that the production had to pause shooting and negotiate with the neighborhood. Michael Mann personally met with residents, explained the importance of the scene, and promised additional compensation for the disruption. Filming resumed, but the production added sound blankets to dampen the noise between takes. Number 17. The character of Waingro, played by Kevin Gage, was based on multiple real criminals Michael Mann had researched. Waingro represents the chaotic, unpredictable element that professional criminals fear most. The loose cannon who can't be controlled. Gage prepared for the role by studying criminal psychology, particularly psychopaths who commit violence without emotional connection to their victims. The scene where Waingro kills a guard during the armored car robbery, escalating what should have been a clean job into a murder investigation, was based on a real robbery that went wrong when one crew member panicked and started shooting. Number 18. Moby's song, God Moving Over the Face of the Waters, plays during the final act of the film, when Neil McCauley is driving through Los Angeles at night, knowing everything is falling apart around him. Michael Mann discovered the track while editing Heat, playing through potential music cues late at night in the editing bay, and became completely obsessed with it. The song has this ethereal, melancholic quality, this sense of something beautiful dying, and Mann knew it was perfect for that moment when Neil realizes his carefully controlled life is coming to an end. He re-edited the entire sequence around the music, adjusting the pacing of the cuts, the length of shots, the rhythm of the visual storytelling to match the emotional arc of the song. He extended some shots to let the music breathe, shortened others to match the musical phrasing, turned the whole sequence into a kind of visual music video where image and sound work together to create something neither could achieve alone. Moby had no idea his music was being used in a major Hollywood production until the film was released and started getting reviewed. He went to see Heat in a theater in New York, having heard his song was in it but not knowing the context. When he finally saw the sequence, watching his ambient electronic music play over those images of Los Angeles at night, De Niro driving through the city, the weight of the character's realization, he said it was surreal. Like seeing his music transformed into something he never imagined when he composed it in his small studio. Number 19. The final confrontation between Neil and Vincent at Los Angeles International Airport was filmed over 5 nights. Michael Mann wanted the scene to take place in complete darkness, except for the airport lights in the background. The lighting setup was complex, using minimal artificial light to maintain the natural feel. Robert De Niro and Al Pacino rehearsed the hand-holding moment, where Vincent holds Neil as he dies, multiple times to get the emotional weight right. That moment was not in the original script. It emerged during rehearsals when both actors felt the characters needed a final connection that acknowledged their strange bond. Number 20. Danny Trejo has a small role as Trejo, one of Neil's crew members. In real life, Trejo served time in San Quentin State Prison before becoming an actor. Michael Mann cast him specifically for that authenticity. Trejo brought real prison tattoos, real mannerisms, and real understanding of criminal culture to the role. During production, Trejo helped the other actors understand how career criminals think and move. His presence on set added a layer of authenticity that you can feel in every scene with Neil's crew. Number 21. Michael Mann's original cut of Heat ran over 4 hours. The studio panicked. They demanded he cut the film down to under 3 hours for theatrical release. Mann spent months in the editing room, removing entire subplots and condensing scenes. Some of the deleted material included more background on Neil's past, additional scenes between Vincent and his wife, and extended sequences of the crew planning their jobs. Mann has said in interviews that he still has all the deleted footage, but he's never released a director's cut because he believes the theatrical version is the right length. The pacing works. The story breathes. Adding back the deleted scenes would improve some character development, but would hurt the overall momentum. Heat changed action cinema in ways that are still being felt 3 decades later. Before Heat, bank robbery scenes in Hollywood films were loud, chaotic, and unrealistic. After Heat, every filmmaker trying to depict tactical operations had to match Michael Mann's standard. The downtown shootout influenced everything that came after. The Dark Knight's opening bank heist, the John Wick series and its obsessive attention to weapon handling, Den of Thieves, which is essentially a love letter to Heat, Triple Frontier, Sicario, The Town. Christopher Nolan has said repeatedly that the bank heist sequence in The Dark Knight was a direct homage to Heat. He studied Mann's approach, the way sound design and precise editing create intensity without shaky cameras or quick cuts. But Heat's real legacy isn't just the action scenes. It's the way Michael Mann treated a crime thriller like a character study. Neil McCauley and Vincent Hanna are mirror images. 2 men completely consumed by their work to the point where they've lost the ability to connect with other human beings. They can't maintain relationships, they can't find peace. The tragedy of Heat isn't that Neil dies at the end. It's that both men are already dead inside long before the final shootout at Los Angeles International Airport. They're ghosts moving through the city, going through the motions of life, but never actually living. The coffee shop scene works because it's 2 lonely men recognizing themselves in each other across a table in a downtown diner. When Neil says he'd drop everything in 30 seconds if he felt the heat around the corner, Vincent understands completely. They're both prisoners of their obsessions and neither one knows how to escape. That's why Vincent holds Neil's hand as he dies on that airport tarmac. It's not just compassion, it's recognition. There, but for the grace of God, goes Vincent Hanna. Heat remains relevant 30 years after its release because those themes never get old. The cost of obsession, the inability to balance work and life, the way people destroy themselves pursuing something they can never actually achieve. Michael Mann captured all of that in a crime thriller about a bank robbery crew and the detective hunting them through Los Angeles. He made a masterpiece disguised as a genre film. If you love crime films, deep dives into film analysis, or behind-the-scenes stories about classic movies that changed cinema forever, hit subscribe. Next week, I'm breaking down the making of another iconic 90s action film that almost never got made, a production so troubled that the studio tried to shut it down 3 times before it finally reached theaters and became a box office phenomenon. The video is on screen now.